Right here! Right here!
More about what happened to you, don't you?
It's all right. It's all right. Johnny, it's all right.
I think there's a reason you don't want to believe in ghosts. Things are seen, but one does not know what. When an interviewer asked Jung what area of research he thought parapsychology should fit into, Jung replied, the psychology of the unconscious. When he was asked about the significance of parapsychological phenomena like ghosts or flying saucers, he replied that the psychology of these things, of these events, had hardly been looked at yet. Isn't that funny? Jung was the pioneer of this collective unconscious and this unconscious world. But even he didn't know exactly what was going on with ghosts or other parapsychological phenomena. Jung did spend a considerable amount of time, though, on these subjects. In fact, you can pick up several of his books, Flying Saucers and The Psychology of the Occult. These are realms that Jung was very interested in. You know, anything numinous, spiritualistic, or synchronistic. And that might be the key, because Jung saw synchronicity as something that changed the way we viewed the world. Perhaps a new layer of reality that dealt with the unconscious side of reality. What does that mean, though, and what does that mean for ghosts? Well, that's exactly the realm that had not been explored yet. Luckily for us, though, I happen to know someone who has explored a bit of this realm, particularly dealing with ghosts, and it just so happens to be my own father.
Well, my name's Scott Bryan, and my educational background is anthropology, so I did that for 10 years and focused on archaeology in Central America, especially among the Maya. Basically, I transferred a lot of those skills into paranormal investigation, and I thought it was actually kind of a good fit. Archaeology is, discovering the past through remains, and I kind of got thinking about it. I was like, well, ghosts, if they exist, that's kind of like archaeological remains. It's what remains of the person.
I assume most, if not all of you, have seen ghost hunters or other things dealing with ghosts on TV. If you're skeptical, I want you to know I'm right there with you. I don't believe any of the stuff I see on TV, and that's because they have every incentive to fabricate the evidence they find.
All right, tell us what we got this week, Chris.
We're going to Colorado to investigate celebrity paranormal...
Wait, what was that? What was that? I heard it too.
Or to just exaggerate the stories.
We have never seen anything like this before. When we flip the entire anomaly upside down and zoom in on it,
to pretend that they got touched or so forth, act up for the camera.
I can't move. What do you want me to do?
It is only because of my first-hand experience ghost hunting with my dad that I know what we're doing is genuine and is not fabricated. I know the methods that we're using. I know how my dad tries to keep it scientific. And this process leads us to investigate the parapsychological in a fairly controlled environment. And because of that, the evidence that he brings to the table, especially in my opinion, is very, very valuable and tells us a lot about this realm. What is a ghost, and are there different types?
Well, that's really tough. In my experience, it's like ghost is a very general term that we use to see basically something that shouldn't be there. But no, there are many types of what we would classify as ghosts. And so sometimes a ghost can be material, meaning It takes a form that it can be touched. That's actually rare. Most people think of ghosts as something more translucent, that you can see it, but you can't necessarily touch it. Mm-hmm. And then there are ghosts that are invisible. So there's ghostly activity. These are things like noises, sounds. You don't actually see anything physical, but something might move. You might hear a knocking. You might hear different things.
What you're about to see is a real and crystal clear example of this type of phenomenon.
Die here? Is that why you're still here?
My arm jerked completely back, but as my arm jerks backwards, the K2 meter that I have in my hand literally launches out of my hand. And you can see that obviously to throw something, you've got to have a forward motion.
Yeah.
And that just didn't happen. And in fact, I actually, when I let go of the meter, it actually stays in space for a moment.
As if it's being held.
Uh-huh. I mean, it's literally a millisecond.
But that even disproves the idea that you have a string attached to it.
Right, exactly.
At this point, let's just assume that there really is something to this ghost phenomenon. But we are still left with unanswered questions. What is a ghost, and how is it formed? There is something that both my dad and his twin brother, my uncle, said about a specific type of ghost that really piqued my interest as a Jungian analyst.
And then there are also ghosts that are simply in the mind. So are not in the physical world, but ghosts that interact with the human psyche.
I'm coming from a psychology angle.
Yeah.
And what I see is that maybe the individual who has experiences is able to project into reality and manifest an entity.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything like that would back this assumption up?
Well, yeah, I would, as far as poltergeists go, I think that it can be a lot of different things. I would personally say, in place of saying attach, I would say that it originates. Poltergeist activity generally comes from an individual, and that if the individual themselves are causing the phenomenon or it is an external force, we don't know.
What secrets are you hiding that you don't want to talk to us? What are you ashamed of? That was a good sound. Can you say anything? Even if we can't. I want to know about those individuals and your history. That's me. And why you still hang out in the building. That was not me. That was loud.
Again, they a lot of times they will have a story in which they'll say, hey, I'm a poltergeist, this is who I am. They might give you some background on who they are.
They talk to the poltergeist.
Many do. Sometimes they do.
Okay.
But the stories, again, are not really verifiable like maybe another ghost. Like, hey, we know that this guy died in this room and he now lingers here. So a lot more anecdotal evidence or stories behind poltergeists.
I think that the human being or the soul or whatever you want to call it has so much more power that we are not aware of, and that simply these people reach a certain age where they're not consciously controlling these things. These things are happening subconsciously, but they have the ability to make things happen around them.
Well, and that's the thing. And you know, again, I've been doing paranormal investigation for over 12 years now. In fact, I think it's 13 or 14 years technically. But interesting enough, where we hear the most is in high schools.
Oh, yeah.
So in junior highs, high schools, and in schools. In fact, I've always said, you can take me to any school. It doesn't matter how old, what the history is. And if it's a big enough school, you're going to have tales of the paranormal. And one of my ideas, I won't call it a belief, but one of the ideas is that we're actually talking about more poltergeist-like activity. That when you have a mass of these young people with high emotions and young women and men going through puberty, is that the reason why there is poor paranormal activity?
It centers around a person, generally adolescents. It also is something that can be caused by let's just say the angst of puberty, people growing up, when they reach a certain age.
Now, in Idaho, there is a school, all right, in Pocatello, and the school is allegedly haunted by a ghost. Roll a tape.
Paranormal experts John and Lisa Bryan have been investigating Pokie High for years. After almost a century of haunting stories have surfaced from the school.
The lights going on and off, having the police called because of issues going on in the building, all of that just goes to showing that it wasn't something that somebody put on there, that it was something that really happened.
All right, so there's a ghost in Pocatello. That's what it was, allegedly.
The poltergeist phenomena seemed to sound eerily similar to Jung's concept of projection. Jung believed that individuals would project out of the collective or personal unconscious, manifesting things in reality via synchronicity. It made more and more sense to me that poltergeists could be the libidinal transfer of energy that Jung talked about, manifested outside the psyche. With this video, Pocatello High made national news. But there is yet another piece of interesting evidence, and it is this photo taken by a janitor who had just waxed the floor hours earlier. Clearly, footprints can be seen walking right through the newly laid wax, and seem to disappear through the middle of a wall, where a staircase used to be. This is his testimony.
My name is Ryan Morrison. I've worked for 4 years now, and when I first got hired, they put me over here in the other building, doing upstairs, and I've seen a lot of stuff and heard a lot of stuff upstairs as well, but ever since I've been over here at the start of the year, I would have to say that the auditorium, beneath the stage, the pit, and the drama, choir and band room, and the palace upstairs are the most haunted in this building. You hear voices, conversations, people talking about clothes downstairs. You go downstairs and there's nobody there, lights are shut out.
It was very satisfying to sit down and build bridges between the paranormal and the psychological. The possibility that projections and libidinal investment play a role in the creation and manifestation of poltergeists or ghosts is tantalizing. Unfortunately, though, there were stories that were much graver and seemed to contradict everything that I had just put together. These stories were physical.
Oh my god! Get a picture of that. Dude, stop.